Sound like you've got a frog in your throat, Will.
Well, it's not a frog. It's small particulate matter, it turns out.
More of a clog.
Yeah, well, the good news is the fire stuff, the fires around us have receded a little bit. Like they're getting under control.
Yeah.
The smoke is less bad. It's all going to Chicago and Montana and places like that now.
Yeah. Have you looked at any of those national maps of smoke and fire coverage? Because it's kind of like a third of the country. Or it was at the peak, at least.
I talked to Fitz the other day, and he said that they were expecting in Chicago to get our smoke like 3 days before that.
That that's just got to be a pure quantity of smoke thing, right? Because I would have thought it would dissipate long before it got that far. So it must be that thick that it kind of coheres for that far. I
haven't seen pictures. We got a couple of letters from people. Somebody in Montana said they were getting our smoke too. My guess is that like bad smoke in Chicago from California fires is like an awesome day right now for us.
Sure.
And like I think I can't remember. Maybe it was Jeff set up in the North Bay, his PM 2.5, which is I can't remember what that number is, but it's the number everybody looks at for particulate matter.
Yeah.
Was like in the high 200s, which is
I think he said it was over 300 one day.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's when like you go outside and start coughing immediately. In my experience, it's really unpleasant.
That is half of the AQI, the air quality index.
Oh yeah. What's the other half?
It's the PM 2.5 and ozone is the other rating. That they combine together. We've actually been back in the green for the first time in like a week.
So the wonderful thing about Pacifica being on the coast is that when the fog hits at the end of the day, usually it takes about an hour for the water droplets to pull all that stuff out of the air. And we've been lucky enough that we've been able to open our windows for multiple hours each night and like air out the house.
You get that wonderful Bay Area evening reprieve.
Yeah, I'm at a 36 right now.
36?
39.
Damn.
Yeah, 39, real good. And then because the windows have been open, our carbon dioxide inside the house is 440 parts per million.
Wait, how do you know that?
I have a sensor.
What?
Yeah.
You have your own weather sensor?
I have multiple weather sensors. I have an indoor sensor that measures the temperature, the barometric pressure, the relative quietness, the humidity, and the carbon dioxide. And then I have outdoor sensors that measure the PM 2.5 number, the temperature, the barometric pressure, the dew point, the humidity, the accumulated rainfall, and the speed and gustiness of wind.
How do you get in all this action? Do you have to get certified or something? Are you a meteorologist now?
Look, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, when you become a dad, suddenly, and you don't wear ties, Father's Day is challenging. So a few years ago, my daughter and wife bought me a weather station because I had expressed some interest in it. And it has been a very fun, but almost completely useless thing to have, because it basically just says like what the one that's wired to the roof of the school around the corner from us says.
My very own weather station, every man's dream.
Look, I remember looking in the back of Boy's Life and I was like, X-ray specs, that's kind of cool. A hovercraft, you can turn an old vacuum cleaner into a hovercraft. That's great, but where am I going to get an old vacuum cleaner? A weather station? I would love this. And Dad was like, where are you going to put a weather? What good is a weather station going to do? But now he can't tell me what to do. I'm my own dad.
Yeah, you're armed with the power of numbers.
Yeah, and it's connected to the internet.
Well, now you got to throw out the trash.
Welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will.
I'm Brad. It's email time.
You know, it's also something else, Brad. This is episode 50.
Whoa, that's a lot.
Yeah,
that's not quite a year, but just under.
No, if we're gonna do a big rebrand or something, though, we got to get right on it, because I feel like the past tense thing maybe was a mistake, and we got one more chance to make it right.
Is this the first time you've said this publicly? It's not the first time you've said it privately.
I can't remember.
I don't know if you actually floated this idea in front of the audience or not before.
I think it was just to you.
The idea of changing the name of the podcast has come up.
Yeah, Brad and Will are making a tech pod.
Yeah, when you put it that way, like the past tense makes it sound like it's not happening anymore. So much.
Yeah, that's true.
Is that your big reasoning? You never really gave me much of a pitch for exactly why.
That's it. It feels weird to be doing something in the present tense that we're discussing in the past tense.
I don't know that either of us were ever particularly happy with this name. It's just that we couldn't think of anything else.
I mean, I kind of like Sweatpants Tech Pod, but it's very dumb.
Yeah.
And also, like, I'd never wear anything but sweatpants now, so it would be entirely true.
Also, I don't think that name got spoken or suggested until we had already recorded. Like that came out
the Sweatpants Tech Pod
I think that came out during an episode, so we were already doing the podcast.
It's possible.
We do have that Twitter though.
Yeah,
I think I'm fine. I don't know. I'm not opposed to it necessarily.
Let's hear what people think. Let's get some feedback.
Hey, name our podcast.
Yeah, help us name this podcast that we've been doing for a year almost now.
Also, we own all of your work.
Yes. We emailed it to ourselves already. It's ours.
That's right.
We can emails. You said emails. Yes. So you're saying that people sent electronic communiques
yes, I've got
to techpod@content.town.
I've got way more than I think we have time to read, actually.
Yeah, that's always the case.
There are 19 emails labeled here in this Gmail inbox, some of which have 2 and even 3 labels on them.
That's too many labels.
Because we've been nesting labels inside of labels. If anybody knows a way to arbitrarily order emails in Gmail, I would love to know about it.
I look, we have to have somebody that listens to this that works at Google.
Yeah.
You tromp over to the Gmail team and plop your whatever Google Teams thing that you use. Look, you can't go to their desk, I realize, but just send them a note in Google's version of Slack, whatever it is they call it, and be like, hey, these guys do this podcast and they want to be able to drag the emails in whatever order you want instead of having them reverse sorted by date. That's all we want.
Do you know how much cognitive overhead there is associated with trying to figure out which email to read next after the last one? Because I can't put them in the order I would like to read them ahead of time.
Yeah, no, there's a reason that we have to have 2 people to do the podcast. I couldn't do that and answer questions at the same time. That would be impossible.
It is just, yes. All right, let's dig in here. I love email week. I have to confess, not having to think of a topic for once a month is, you don't understand the relief of just knowing what next week's episode is going to be and not having to worry about it. We
should come up with another thing we can do on like the other, the even weeks.
That sounds like cheating. I don't think we can get away with that.
Okay.
I mean, if we could serialize every other week, I would be all for it, but I don't know that, I don't know if we can get away with that one. All right. Where to start? We got a lot of stuff here.
Should we talk about disaster stuff?
Yeah, I guess sure. Well, I don't know.
Fresh.
It's fresh. It's pretty dark, but
you don't want to start with a showstopper.
No, I suppose you're right. All right. Well, you know what? I'm going to read my favorite one of these emails. About evacuation and disaster preparedness.
Sorry, everyone else.
First, I mean, nothing against. You'll see why I like it so much when I read it. Right now, it's from Eric. I listened to your most recent episode on disaster preparedness, and I think you guys forgot to mention cash.
Yeah. No, we absolutely did. Cash is important.
We really didn't think about cash.
I like seeds, too, just in case you need them for the after times.
Yes, clearly cash does not rule everything around us.
Also, we forgot water. Water is important, too.
Actually, I believe there's also an email about water in here that I should pull out as well, but it seems like a good opportunity to just talk about the role of cash in daily life at this point. To be fair, I should preface that by saying, like, if you're in a severe disaster situation, that's not exactly routine daily life anymore. So maybe cash has more importance in that scenario, but like day to day, what's your cash life like at this point?
Mr. Softy comes to town on Tuesday and Thursday. I usually walk over to the ice cream truck at least once during that visit. And I exclusively pay in cash and leave bringing exactly the amount that I know that I will need. And everything else becomes the tip. So I don't have to take any money back from Mr. Softy.
It's because you don't want to touch things that other people have been touching.
I do not want to touch anything. I don't even want to touch myself. I'm gross.
I saw some research going around about hand washing actually being useful again after.
There was a super duper good article in Time magazine yesterday or day before that Aaron Biba, who is a science journalist who used to write for us on Tested and has written in the Atlantic and all sorts of places. She's great
on Twitter. Yeah.
She's a good Twitter follow, and she shared this, said the science is vetted. It was basically a roundup of ways you can catch the Rona, and it is worth reading. I will make sure I put the link in the show notes because everybody should read it.
Yeah, because it felt like there was a period for the last few months where they talked like surface transmission was not really a concern. So,
I mean, the TLDR on surface transmission is that it is a low percentage compared to like aerosolized droplets and stuff like that. That's it. But it's possible, but unlikely.
Not no chance though.
Yeah, no chance.
Okay, that's good to know.
You have to mess up.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, what's a good like cash stockpile for your bug out bag? Like,
I don't know if I want to say that on a podcast.
Yeah, maybe not.
Couple. I mean, I have enough money that I could pay cash for enough gas to get me
clear of the disaster.
1,000 miles, let's say.
Okay.
Probably with at least one car and maybe two.
Yeah. Of course, you got to eat on the way as well.
Yeah.
Of course, hopefully you're going to have some food of some nature.
Probably going to bring some food. Yeah. I mean, we talked about this when we did the coronavirus episode, but the weird thing about that is like all the other disasters that we've ever prepared for are ones that like you drive 200 miles and you're good.
Right.
Like you get a hurricane, you get an earthquake, you drive a few hours, you're fine.
Yeah.
With that, you can't outdrive it. And that kind of changed my perspective on a lot of that stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I always keep a few. I mean, I do keep a few, $1,000 worth of cash probably around.
Wow. That's way more than I would have suggested, but do what you're comfortable with, I guess.
I mean, the ATM won't work, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
As you know, as a follow up to the soup wallet fiasco, I was looking around by the way, looking around at wallets a little bit. It's amazing how many wallets treat cash as an afterthought at this point. On
the day to day, I never carry cash.
Really? No kidding.
Almost never.
Huh.
I would be subject to vagrancy laws in places where they still have vagrancy laws.
Huh. All right.
Yeah.
I like to have $30-$40 on me if I can, at least, just in case. But
fair.
But yeah, a lot of wallet designs out there are pretty much purely built around cards and stuff at this point. So
I think I might have a 20 wedged into the center, like where between my driver's license and my insurance card.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That'll get you somewhere.
Like I can get a cab to bus to someplace my Clipper card will work probably.
Sure. There's another email.
Hold on. What's your cash? What's your cash hoard at the house? You got where you got it? Is it in like cookie jar? What's your?
I'm not going to say that on this podcast,
please. Oh, okay.
You trying to bait me here?
I just am curious. That's an honest question.
It's actually I don't have that much right now because I was slowly spending it down because it was just too convenient to reach for it when I needed it. But probably not as hidden as it should be. Would you hide it in the building? Would you hide it in like I don't know, ventilation duct or secret compartment of some kind? Would you trust that?
Probably not.
Yeah.
I have a place.
Okay. Oh, huh. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, you do have that. We did talk about your crawl space last week.
I mean, that's not accessible. It's not in there, but it's someplace. It's someplace where I can get to it quickly, but it's safe.
Okay. Fair enough. All right. Next email is from Zach. One thing you didn't mention was extra fuel. I've lived my whole life in the suburbs south of Houston and have evacuated twice. Fuel was always a problem. During the current evacuation around Laura, people in Houston are waiting 45 minutes or more to fuel up. People will get stuck on the side of the road without fuel. You can store several gallons in the red tanks with fuel stabilizer, and it's good for a year. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that it was not stable otherwise.
If you haven't filled up your car since the quarantine started, probably it's time to think about running that gas out and replacing it.
Yikes.
This is a good tip. Usually, so we have a rule here that once we get below half a tank, we usually fill up since we're in an earthquake zone. So we always have one car with at least half a tank of gas.
Man, that is very well prepared.
Maybe I'm a secret prepper. Maybe I just didn't realize this.
You're like a sensible prepper, though.
But yeah, like if I get below a quarter of a tank, I start getting anxious here. And a quarter of a tank for me is about 100 miles. So 85 miles. So it's enough to get reasonably far.
Yeah.
But yeah, gas. I know I had friends who had to evacuate from Katrina, and they stopped and helped people who, or some of them probably ran out of gas on the side of the road and were hosed.
Yeah.
So that's a good tip.
He finishes by just saying you can store several gallons in the red tanks with fuel stabilizer, and it's good for a year. I know a lot of people will once fill their cans up at the start of hurricane season, and then in the fall empty those into a vehicle and wait until next season.
It's a good call.
Yeah. That is
and the fuel stabilizer you can get at like any auto parts store like AutoZone or Kragen or whatever your local brand is.
Yes. Was that it for? Oh gosh, no. We've got a whole bunch of disaster preparedness here. How about? Oh yeah, here's the water email from Jimmy.
This is Jimmy.
Yes, this is in fact Jimmy writing about water. This might not be as important in an evacuation since you're probably heading to some known place, but it is good to have water on hand or have some idea how to produce drinkable water. My neighbor likes the 2-pass method where he uses a mesh to filter out most contaminants and then uses strong UV light to kill any lingering bacteria. I mainly stick with the Sawyer microfilters, but I do have 3 other methods. If my family has to drink dodgy water, I'll be running it through as many methods of filtering as I can. Even a small bottle of iodine tablets would be better than nothing to have in a kit. There's a company called Blue Can. Did we might have mentioned that?
I haven't heard of that. I had never heard of this one before.
This sounds familiar, but excuse me. There is a company called Blue Can that supposedly produces 12 cans of water with a 50-year shelf life. I carry a well-protected 24 in the trunk of my car. I'm waiting for the 5-year mark before I pop one open to give it a taste test. The saying that goes, 2 is 1, 1 is none, I first heard in prepping forums. So have at least 3 methods of doing something because 1 or even 2 methods can fail, just as with data backups.
I like this a lot. It speaks to me.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the 50-year-old water.
I'll be a little less curious about that one, but
I want to say Vinny introduced me to the filter, then blast with UV strategy for water cleaning when we were camping once a long time ago.
Okay.
And it worked well. The water, I drank straight ass lake water and it was fine. It tasted good.
Boy, man, those amoebas, you got to watch out. Just don't get it up your nose.
Look, he put it through the filter and then he did the UV thing. He was like, this is fine. You try this and then let us know if you feel weird after a couple hours.
Great. Can you drink? I assume you can drink the amoebas. You just can't snort them.
With in order to get the brain amoebas, you have to pretty much power flush your sinuses with lake or pond water is my understanding. So you have to do like a front somersault and not blow out.
Oh boy. Let's move on.
It's a good idea.
To something cheerier. These are not cheery though at all.
This is maybe this was a bad idea to start with this stuff.
Let me find the one. Hang on. Let me just search here real fast. Find the one about getting hit by a bus. There it is. This is from Brian. Maybe this will be the last one of these.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
From Brian, you've talked about your backups, but how do you, well, this is sort of half disaster preparedness, half kind of data retention type stuff. You've talked about your backups, but how do you ensure your wife or other loved ones are able to retrieve and decrypt, if applicable, your information if you and your wife get hit by a bus? I worry about my wife having to figure out how to retrieve photos of her and our kids if I kick the bucket, or grandparents or siblings if we both kick the bucket together.
It's real upbeat questions. The password manager that we use in my family provides a fall over basically so that you can access somebody else's account on the family plan, but it doesn't do it silently. It will change my access. If she accesses mine, I'll know. I'll get a message that basically says, hey, somebody's accessed your account. You got to do this and this and this. And it's specifically for that use case. Like if something happens to me and I'm not able to give her access to the account or give her the password, then she'll be able to fall over. So I don't have to share it with her. I don't have to give unfettered access to my passwords to my private stuff. But if in case of an emergency, she can access that, and all of the stuff that we're talking about in this case lives there. So things like logins for insurance and healthcare and banks and business papers and all of that lives inside the password manager.
And to be clear, that is just a courtesy notification to you. I assume it just goes through for her. Like
I think it's actually an encryption type thing. I think what happens is it jacks up the password so that my old password will not work. When she does that. But wow. I haven't actually tried it, which is probably a mistake. We should probably do that just to see what happens.
2 is 1, 1 is none.
Oh man,
just keep it in mind.
You're gonna make that the name of this episode, aren't you?
That's your mantra. Yeah, I had a different episode title in mind, but I think that has to take it.
Hold on, we might get an unsavory element if we do that.
You think?
We might get the prepper crowd.
Just think of it as on outreach to new audiences.
Okay.
All right. This
next week, militias.
Oh boy, man, let's not.
Too real. Sorry.
I didn't think of this email as related to disaster preparedness, but you said it kind of is. So I'm curious to hear your angle on this. But
okay.
This one is from Matti, I guess. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, from Finland.
Oh, yeah.
Since you've been talking about Gopher a lot lately, you should know.
Have we ever?
Yeah, I know, man. We're all about that Gopher over here. You should know that there's a new protocol out there called Gemini. You could think of it as a beefed up Gopher or a very stripped down World Wide Web. As someone who was too young to experience the early Gopher and web, I first got on the internet in the early 2000s, but who is getting extremely bummed out by the modern web, Gemini feels really comfy. No ads, no tracking, no JavaScript, just a bunch of interesting people writing their gem logs, as opposed to web logs, and other text-based content. And then we'll put this in the show notes, but he includes the official website for this protocol is gemini.circumlunar.space.
It's a pretty good URL.
Incredible address. That's circumlunar, CIRCUMLUNAR. We will put it in the show notes. Gemini.circumlunar.space. But
so this one kind of goes with the one that I was going to say Tatum, but it's Ted sent in.
We'll get to that. Maybe we should read that next.
Yeah, this is really cool. And I think so. The thing that's occurred that we'll just read the next one next. I think that's really cool. I think everybody should check it out. I spent some time on there this afternoon. It's weird and neat, and I might set up a Gemini node.
Oh,
I think that's yes. Hello.
How does it? I mean, could you answer how it differs from Gopher? Are you that deep in that you know?
It just seemed like it was maybe a little bit more
Actually, I'm skimming the FAQ here. It's a protocol in the traditional client-server request response paradigm and is built on mature, standardized technology like URIs, MIME media types, and TLS. So sounds like maybe it's Gopher-esque, but with more modern standards underneath.
Well, yeah, and I may not be the right person to describe this because when I clicked on the link, it opened my Gopher client, which also I have a Gopher client.
Awesome.
So yeah, I don't know how it differs, but like if you can run it on it may just be that it's easier to run on a modern infrastructure is the big thing, but I don't know for sure.
That's cool. Okay, yeah.
This page that I'm on now says, "Welcome to the SDF Public Access Unix System, established 1987."
That's great.
That's cool.
That's what old ass Unix stuff is all I want to mess around with these days. So
yeah, that's the internet I crave.
I am going to go check that out for sure. All right, yeah. As you said, this next email comes from user Ted.
Yeah, Ted,
who says, I just got my ham radio license because I live in Northern California, where there is a better than average chance I will be without power and potentially trying to escape a fire at the same time. It seemed like a reasonable way to channel my existential fears into something potentially useful. Anyway, during the course, they talk about using the ham network repeaters for data transfer. This is not just software-defined radio stuff, but actually transferring data over the 70-centimeter UHF ham radio band. It got me thinking about how useful it might be to have a network of battery or solar-powered Raspberry Pi-like devices in a mesh that could provide data if you didn't have access to data because mobile tower batteries went down like they did last year during fire season in California. How viable do you think it would be to build an over-the-air text-only network of low-powered devices available for emergency access? And then he mentions, I have found a project. Let's see. I didn't click through to this. Oh, well, it's on spectrum.ieee.org. So, it's serious.
Ooh, that's an actual spec. Yeah.
Yes, I have found this project using IPv4 around this at 500 kilobytes per second. Or I wonder if that's actually kilobits per second.
Yeah.
Geez, that's pretty rudimentary. Then there's Hamnet in Europe. Plus there is, I don't know how to pronounce this acronym.
Arden would be my guess.
AREDN. Would be cool to standardize on a set of protocols and have people start setting these up. Look forward to your thoughts. I didn't know you could do that. Of course you can. It's a transmission. So of course you can send digital information rather than analog audio, right? But that's still cool as hell. I had never thought about that.
Yeah. So this, I was in one of the areas that the cell towers went down when the power was out for fire season last year, because the batteries are good for about 48 hours. And this is a fascinating idea to me. It reminds me a lot of Sean Bonner's Safecast thing. So he's one of the people who's been working on that. And the Safecast nodes are basically these little, it's like a box the size of an old 80s Walkman that's waterproof. It's like a clear plastic box, and there's a bunch of circuit boards in there, and there's a bunch of sensors for like air quality and radiation and things like that. And they started working on that after Fukushima because there wasn't a monitoring network for the kinds of things that you cared about, like radiation, particulate matter, and stuff like that after that kind of disaster. But this is taking it one step. This idea is, I was talking to Ted the other day, and this came up.
You know him?
Oh, it's a weird coincidence.
You know Ted?
I know. Look, everybody knows Ted. User Ted. So user Ted and I were talking, and he was like, "Why isn't there like a mesh node network for that?" That you could set up on your towers relatively inexpensively, hook a small solar panel up to it, and just let that thing run, and either get data to it via like ham radio, and then but then the trick is you also have to have Wi-Fi modules so that people can like walk over to the tower and get information when like the radio's down. And I saw the Gemini thing that came in from Maddie, and was like, oh, these two things go great together, right?
Sure, yeah.
Why don't we as a community, we have a bunch of wonderful nerds out there.
Yeah. Let's
do this. Let's build something that lives on a Pi, uses these low power unlicensed radio spectrums, whether it's 900 megahertz or 70 millimeter or whatever it is, 70, I can't remember what the frequency Ted said. But like, you don't need a massive amount of throughput for this to work.
Yeah, especially if you're doing this is a text-based protocol.
But at the same time, it would be incredibly useful to have a way for somebody that has internet on like one side of town, or that has information that's talked to the fire department and says, hey, the fires are 10 miles south. And then you can just walk out to the phone pole at the end of the corner and get the update on what's going on without having to like listen for 15 hours on the radio for them to update your particular small area or whatever. Like, there's an opportunity for local information that is infrastructure proof and doesn't require outside power, doesn't require outside communication. That's really interesting and weird, I think.
Man, I'm sitting here like feeling these kind of warm, fuzzy feelings about the idea of, not that I'm capable of it, but of the idea of putting a project like that together and actually building a standard and a kind of community driven system that could actually benefit people like that. That sounds super cool.
Yeah, I think so too.
And now I hope somebody on the Discord picks this idea up and runs with it, because I would love I would love for there to be a communal open source project driven by our community, so I could watch the channel devoted to it as people argued over how to standardize it and like what direction to go in, and that would be highly entertaining.
This brings me to the new spin-off project that we're announcing at the end of our first year called Scene Drama. It's a scholarly look at we were talking about stuff in the Discord today, and somebody was talking about scene drama and the mechanical switch key space.
I have to go read that.
And I was like, shit, we could do a whole podcast that's a whole like series of podcasts. It's just like the scene drama and all the like the BSD scene drama, the mechanical keyboard scene drama.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
totally.
But yeah, I think this is something like if you look at what happened in Iowa last month or last week, I guess seems like a month ago.
Still ongoing is my understanding.
Yeah, like the power's been out for 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
There's no internet. Being able to get updates from authorities and community members and having like a bare ass text message board for posting hopefully things that are more useful than what's on Nextdoor.
Yeah.
Would be really nice. And if you build a phone app that lets you grab that stuff, then more power, that sounds cool.
Also, God help the people on the Gulf Coast, or is that roughly where those hurricanes are barreling down on?
So Marco landed as a tropical storm, and Laura seems to be gaining strength and is going to land between New Orleans and Houston, it seems like, which is bad.
It seems like potentially a majority of the nation is going to be dealing with the aftermath of natural disasters very soon.
Yeah, the west is burning, the east is flooded, the south is flooded, and the east is about to get all the rain that came from Marco. So it's a great weather month right now.
State of Iowa is still flat from
I mean, Iowa's always flat in fairness.
Or you know what I mean, more flat.
43% of crops lost, I think, was what from the Dureco, which is how you're supposed to pronounce that.
Yes,
apparently.
Actually, we got an email about that, didn't we?
We got multiples. People in Iowa were upset at my pronunciation of that last week. So
somebody wrote
they were nice. It wasn't, nobody was mean, but
let's see.
It's a German word, apparently.
Yes. I would not have, that is probably the last language I would have thought that belonged to.
I didn't realize there were CHs in German, but the more you know.
Yeah.
Guess I should have.
You didn't flag this one, but should I read this one about the Dureco and fiber?
Yeah.
So okay, I haven't screened this one.
I thought it was good. It was about municipal fiber.
I haven't screened this one, so I don't know. It didn't make it into the
in our research about places to potentially move. There is a lot of municipal and like electrical co-op fiber in places that are very rural.
Oh, that's great to hear.
Yeah.
Like, are we at the point where I can just admit this openly and not be embarrassed by it? That like I don't want to move anywhere that doesn't have fiber at this point.
Oh, it's okay. Like I would maybe move someplace that has gig cable, but I'd have to really think about it a lot.
Yeah. We should, this may be a big can of worms to open. We should maybe think about doing like networking above gigabits as an episode sometime soon.
Madness.
Like I've just been starting.
No one's ever going to need more than a gigabit, Brad.
I've been starting to look into that stuff a little bit. QNAP just announced a consumer grade network switch that does 2.5 GBE.
That's not I'm 10 gigabit or bust.
Also, that's the thing, it's like 10 gigabit has been around as a spec for God, how long? 15 years or something?
Longer than that, yeah.
But it hasn't proliferated in the consumer space, and all of a sudden, like I guess there are motherboards shipping with 2.5 gigabit ports on them, and now like $100 switches are starting to come out, which is like getting into the territory of like, yeah, I'll just buy one of those, sure.
Well, and also SSDs are fast enough that like they can actually feed a faster than 1 gigabit connection now.
So I've got an NVMe drive in my FreeNAS machine as it's where my jails live, and it's also just like as a scratch drive because it's terabyte, so it's like a nice place to. It's like, if I need to export a like 50 gig video file instead of writing it back to the same storage pool, I'll export it to that scratch drive. It's just faster, not reading and writing on the same drives at the same. Anyway, but you're totally right. Like how fast can you read from a PCIe 3 SSD? Like a couple gigabytes a second or something?
It's a lot. I don't remember off the top of my head.
At some point, it feels like a bummer that you can only transfer like 100 megabytes a second over your network when you have a drive that fast in your NAS. So there is a need for it.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, look, I can almost saturate a gigabit on my NAS with 5 drives in the array. Yeah. Like it'll get real close.
Yeah. So anyway, that's just a kind of a burgeoning topic that seems like it's going to become more of a thing soon. You
need to get real into sintering fiber, Brad. That's the next step. You gotta blaze those. You gotta burnish those ends.
Is that the thing where you like have to like melt it to terminate it somehow? Like
something
like
that.
Bond the fiber together or something like that. I barely know what that's about.
Every time I've ever been in a room where somebody was doing that, they looked like they would spend a lot of time practicing and were really good at it. So
the only reason I even know about that is because we actually talked to Wes about this a little bit when he was on a few weeks ago. Yeah. I forget the name of one of his coworkers who did an article on, I guess it was on PC Gamer, wasn't it?
Twan. Twan got the gigabit or the 5 gigabit or whatever.
I think it was 2. He got 2 gigabit service to his house and how they had to dig up the street. And then they brought the gigantic, awful plasma machine or whatever it is, the thing that you have to like burn the fiber together to. And if you don't align the fiber, like the cables properly when you do it, apparently it's like totally useless and you have to do it again.
Yep.
Anyway, all right, I've rambled enough. I'll just read this email real fast from Patrick. Best from the cornfields, he says, because he's in Iowa. I am an Iowa guy with fiber. Luckily, the area I live in, Dubuque County.
I'm not going to try it.
I'm going to say Dubuque.
This is your funeral, man.
Is my guess. Was spared the worst of the Dureco. I can't. I'm just going to stop talking. This is too much.
No, you're fine. You got it. You're owning.
You mentioned that you know someone in Iowa who has had some trouble. Can you share any more details? I don't have a lot more details other than that it seems like help has been slow in coming. I haven't heard too much from out there, but in eastern Iowa, there is an electrical co-op that set up fiber to be the backbone of their power stations. And decided that they might as well offer to their power subscribers the same option for fiber internet. Currently, I subscribe to a 500 up and down for $80, and it's only $10 more to get full gigabit. Oh, man, you got to treat yourself. Go for the gig.
That's pretty good.
Yes. This is much better than the only other option in the area, which is Mediacom. They are equivalent to Comcast and other horrible cable giants in their lack of quality service, lack of quality customer service, and misleading advertising. Due to the Dureco, Mediacom subscribers lost internet for a minimum of 3 days. Even in the less affected area where I live, and in the more affected areas, some are still without it. The venerable co-op, however, kept the internet on throughout for most customers and was quick to restore service for those with more substantial damage. Not quite a municipal internet provider, but I am very happy with them. That's awesome.
I mean, that's what the power company did in my hometown. They rolled out dark fiber to connect their power substations and stuff. And then when they had it throughout the whole town, they just flipped the switch and were like, hey, by the way, we do internet and TV now.
At the risk of consuming the rest of this episode, what can you explain dark fiber?
Oh, so when they were buying power lines that ran down streets to people's houses, they just bought the ones that had fiber bundled on there. Okay. As well as the power cords. The copper.
So these are discrete power cables, just all in kind of the same, bundled into the same run, is what you're saying?
Yeah, but as it was explained to me, it was like a little bit more expensive, but not like the cost of doing that of running fiber is people going out and running the lines, not the actual fiber. Like the fiber is relatively inexpensive. So when they had to replace lines, they just started replacing them with fiber already on the line.
I see.
And so then when it was time to turn on the fiber, like all the expensive shit was done and they just had to like run wires to people's houses.
Okay. I was sitting here trying to figure out like, how are they running power and fiber on the same line? But it's just a bundle.
It's literally a cable with like a fiber component and a copper component.
Right. All right. I'm excited about this email. I've been waiting for this one.
One of those.
Been waiting for this one. This email is insane and I love it. It's from Brock. It's about FPGAs in broadcast. Just bear with me on this one. All right. I'm going to do my best.
On. We got to do a disclaimer on this one.
Yeah.
Because I looked at this one. I was like, I made a kind of stink eye. I was like, I don't know what any of this stuff means.
Forgive me if I mispronounce any of these acronyms. Should we just say it up front? I was going to mention it at the end, but reading this email, A, I love this, but B, I imagine this is what it sounds like when we talk about very jargon heavy stuff to people that have no idea or no experience with what we're talking about. Because this is very much that. So this is just stuff that
it's like Carmack tweet level of density.
Never come into contact with before, but it sounds super cool. In a previous episode, you guys wondered where else you could find FPGAs hiding. Well, I work as an engineer for a systems integrator designing and building broadcast facilities, TV trucks, sports venues, etc. And I can tell you that the professional broadcast industry is full of FPGAs. Pretty much every piece of pro core rack equipment has an FPGA or two in them. Unsurprisingly, low latency hardware emulation comes in very handy for video. Especially now that the broadcast industry is creeping more and more into the IP video range. Low latency is key for encoding and decoding video into packets for switching over a fabric. I'm going to stop there. Do you know what he means by fabric? I was
good right up until you said fabric. And then I was like, huh?
Yes, I fully knew what was going on in this email until we hit fabric.
Yeah.
I assume it's probably some kind of super, super high performance network based on
I always thought it was when you take fibers and weave them together in a crisscrossing pattern.
Okay. That was in the old days.
Oh, okay.
I mean, talk about horse buggy era.
Look, sometimes you use a loom.
Yes. Yes, you've mentioned NDI before, and NDI is kind of the prosumer IP video standard. But like Will said, it's limited on bitrate. This is where it gets kind of wild to me. Much of the high-end pro market is going SMPTE 2110, which is a standard that just throws uncompressed video down bandwidth lanes of 1.5 gigahertz, 3 gigahertz, 6, even 12 gigahertz, or whatever you need for your resolution and frame rate. The data is completely raw, so to tell each side what is going on, you need an SDP equivalent, which in the SMPTE 2110 world is NMOS. That's NMOS.
Okay.
I assume that's how you say that, NMOS?
I mean, you say CMOS, CMOS,
sure.
So why not?
NMOS allows devices to be discoverable automatically by the main video switch and assign it a multicast address and endpoint control, so it can virtually be plug and play. These switches are either built into a video router by the manufacturer, or they can be a COTS solution, which is consumer off the shelf, from a company like Arista with a management application layer from a broadcast company over top. Usually the port speeds are between 25 gigabit and 100 gigabit.
Holy crap.
Depending on needs, then those are parsed out across the plant using fanned out fibers and splice panels. Do you have older baseband SDI gear you want to use with new SMPTE 2110 IP builds? No problem. You wrap the SDI signals using a gateway device that uses tons of FPGA power to flip and encode the signals. This can also be done for NDI applications as well with different devices. Lots of info there, I know, but the world of broadcast tech is extremely fascinating right now, and I could talk about this stuff for hours.
That is buck wild.
It is super crazy.
They're just wow. So this is using some sort of high end. So are they running this over like SDI that just has infinite bandwidth because it's a giant fat thick piece of copper?
I don't know. That's a good question.
We need to find somebody. We need to find a broadcast technology expert.
Maybe we just do an episode. Brock sounds like he qualifies. Maybe we should just get him on.
See what kind of microphone he has. Maybe see if he knows how to work a microphone.
That's wild to me to hear, because I was always under the impression that uncompressed, like fully raw uncompressed video was just prohibitive to work with. Like it just wasn't realistic. So
well, maybe not anymore.
Yeah,
life finds a way, Brad.
I guess so. That stuff's crazy.
Like just to be clear, an NDI stream, a 1080p NDI stream is like 50 or 100 megabits, depending on what kind of like what the software thinks you can handle.
Yeah.
So 25 gigabits is like just bonkers.
That's bananas. That's super crazy. I've seen some people on the Discord recently saying that NDI is not the most reliable for them. Like even though it's only like 100 megabit stream, like even on a gigabit network, you can't necessarily rely on it not choking here and there.
If you need it to be reliable, you need to do point to point for each endpoint, or at least put it on a separate network away from your normal network stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
Which granted,
but it's definitely not the best thing out there for even like there's better options for home use even.
Right.
I think these days.
Like what?
SMPT 2110.
Okay. Yeah. Let me just run a 25 gigabit link straight between my PC and my NAS and I'll be good to go.
Yeah, you need to get a bunch of FPGAs first. You're going to need that.
Sold. Let's see here. You want to do a few unitaskers?
Is
now the time?
Yeah, we can do some. We got a bunch of good unitaskers. Yes. We had to kind of whittle it down some.
Yes, we did. How about I'm going to start with this email from Tom. I'm just here to tell you that I just bought 2 sets of rollerblade wheels for the office chairs I have at home, and they are awesome. They handle transitioning over. We talked about this, right? Did that come up on that?
Yeah, you were enthusiastic about that,
yes,
and I questioned.
They handle transitioning over different surfaces and over thresholds really well. They are silent and never lock up, so they never leave gouging marks on your floor. If you have hardwood and have a floor protector, you can toss that big sheet of plastic in the trash because these things are never going to lock up and dig in like cheap plastic casters. You have to be careful, though. My wife has a standard office chair, and I have an IKEA Marcus, by far the best chair I've ever put my ass in. It's his language, not mine. Turns out IKEA uses a different size post for their casters, so you have to make sure you get the rollerblades that say works with IKEA on them. They're a little expensive, but these things are going to outlast the chairs I have.
So
that sounds great.
It sounds pretty good. I looked at Amazon after this, and I was like, I had my finger hovered over the buy button. I was like, I don't know about this, because I didn't really recognize any of the companies. So maybe if people have done this and have recommendations, I would like a brand recommendation, maybe.
Yeah, dude, I feel like that is a whole episode. In fact, we should probably do this as an episode, but like the process of buying a seemingly simple item on Amazon or similar online retail at this point is such a nightmare.
Like generic is kind of dead in a bad way.
Right. Like I need a new lamp, just a basic ass adjustable, like a gooseneck type desk lamp, you know? I want something I can bend and kind of point around the room, since I have to live stream from here now. And sometimes you want to control your lighting a little bit.
You should get a ring light, man.
No, this is for like a bit the back corner of the room. It's something I can kind of backlight with a little bit, but I've been on Amazon for days trying to find a lamp. I already bought one, which seemed like it was going to be nice and do the job. And it got here, and the plastic base was so cheap and flimsy and light that it literally would not hold the lamp up if you bent the. I mean, it's an adjustable lamp that can't be adjusted because it will tip over, because there is no weight in the base whatsoever.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Because the base seems like it's made out of like 40 cents of cheap plastic. So that went back. But like, there are no name brands on Amazon.
This is the thing.
Lamps of that nature. Like where are the decent like mid-range products anymore? You know,
I would go to like IKEA or Target or something to look for that stuff, and it's not really an option right now.
Right. That's part of it. I checked Target. They actually don't have much right now. Like that's the other thing, is like the Amazonification of other online retail. Like everything from like Newegg to Walmart to you name it. I think Target's doing it too now. Like they've all adopted that model of like hosting third-party sellers in their kind of standard storefront or inventory system. You know what I mean?
I'm shaking my head.
It just becomes impossible to like parse quality and figure out what's decent. And like, if you're going to buy some cheap junk, like I did unknowingly, like it's just.
Well, so, okay, let's break this down into three. My light solution is to buy just a normal light that you can put a normal light bulb in, and then get a smart bulb that you can control the temperature of the light and the brightness.
Yeah.
That's worked really well for me.
I want a lamp that isn't going to fall over and or burn my house down.
My other question about the rollerblade wheels is, are they going to get caught? Like I hate it when cables get tangled up in wheels as a VR developer, because I always have cables around, and if I roll over one of those cables, it's like $100 mistake if I jack up the cable. So like I want cables. I want cable safe wheels more than I want high speed or bump clearance. So yeah,
that would be good to know. But yeah, you're right. There are seemingly endless brands of these on Amazon. And granted, I bet half of them are all made by the same factory.
Yeah.
And even that is hard to tell.
Can I get like some skateboard trucks and put one of those on each of the wheels, and like have a skateboard chair?
That sounds pretty good.
That would be cool.
The only thing stopping me from ordering those wheels at this point is that I probably shouldn't put them on this 17 going on 18-year-old chair.
You can take them off.
I know, but I should hold out and treat myself, you know?
Okay.
Get the new chair and then get the new wheels.
That's true.
Let's see. There's an email from Ash. Last Christmas, Santa brought my 5-year-old a Hot Wheels track, which required 4 D-cell batteries to run the motor. The batteries lasted about 30 minutes before losing the power required to propel the cars around the track. This quickly became expensive. So instead, I went to Amazon and bought this, and he links a variable voltage power adapter. The great thing about this adapter is you can specify the voltage output from 3 volts to 12 by rotating a dial on the adapter. It comes with 8 interchangeable tips that fit most devices, including a tip that let me connect the Hot Wheels motor wires directly to the adapter. This beats spending $10 an hour on batteries. Plus, as a bonus, if you crank up the voltage, you can send the Hot Wheels flying across the room.
I love this. I love this so much.
Yeah. That's pretty good. I've never seen something like this before.
Oh, you never had one of these?
No. I'm talking about the adapter, not the Hot Wheels.
Yeah, no, we always had these. Like I've had these in my life. You used to go to Radio Shack and buy these, and you'd get a just a bog standard like DC transformer, and then it would have 50 million little tips that you would immediately lose the first time you used it.
Sure.
And
it was adjustable?
Then you'd have to there's an array of like tips on the side, and like there was one for like, there was one that was like a 3 volt 2 amp with an internal pole and all that. I've never seen one of these bricks that you have a knob that you can adjust the output. That's the cool thing.
That's what I meant. Yeah, that's I've never seen that either. It's just got.
And then if you want to do something really risky, this one comes with a with screw terminals, so you can just jam some bare wires in there and then cinch them down and hook whatever the hell you want up to it. I think this is great.
Brad and Will made a tech pod. It's not liable for any damage incurred based on purchasing recommendations aired on this podcast.
Reading email does not indicate endorsement.
Yeah, please be careful.
That said, yeah, if you're going to do this and use this thing, make sure you understand what the internal pole and the external pole on your DC adapter is. Because if you some of the plugs are physically compatible with other plugs. And if you plug the negative into
the polarity.
Yeah, the polarity. If you plug the negative into the positive, the smoke that makes your thing work will go out and it will be bad. So
practice care.
Yeah.
With this sort of thing.
Yeah, but I like the idea of rocket power to Hot Wheels. That sounds awesome.
That is pretty good.
It's also incredibly shitty that Hot Wheels would sell a fucking thing. I assume Duracell or something probably pays money to Mattel so that Hot Wheels keeps shipping things that eat D-cell batteries. Yeah. But that is lame.
Like everything else, it's probably a racket.
Yeah.
Let's see. This email comes in from I started to say friend of the site, Pat Bear, but I guess it's more like friend of the pod.
Yeah, he's a pod friend.
Do we say that?
Sure.
Friend of the podcast.
Yes.
I don't know.
Noted reader.
I'm still not sure how I feel about using the word pod in a sincere manner, but
I don't. Well, okay, that's a conversation for another. This is another rebranding conversation.
It's just where the world is at these days. I guess it is right there in the name, isn't it? Yeah. So Pat wrote in just a short email. Just got caught up on the podcast. Here's a couple of my favorite pieces of hardware.
Here are a few of his favorite things.
Yes, and Pat has a lot of theater kind of gear experience, working in theaters and so forth.
If you want to get really good at learning how to make stuff with whatever you have on hand, hang out with stage techs at theaters.
I bet.
Because those and the people who make props are the most industrious. I will build something out of nothing people.
I can't imagine. That's probably all. That's got to be most of what that job is, right? Is just I could figure out how to make this kind of mechanical situation happen with whatever I can find in 30 minutes.
MacGyver.
Right.
Yeah, they're all MacGyvers.
Wow. That sounds fun, actually. Let's see. Camera clamp. I use this to attach my webcam to the top of my dual monitor stand. I've also clamped this onto a mic stand when I needed to set up a camera in a tight area where I couldn't fit a tripod. And it is a pretty rugged looking industrial sort of clamp with 2-3 different ways to adjust it.
Yeah, so these things are great. It's basically often they're sold as universal camera mounts. I use them. I found these the first time because I needed a way to attach Vive lighthouses to some light stands or to a pipe in somebody's office or something, and they're fantastic. I'm using 2 of them and a 18-inch or 12-inch rod with 1/4 inch female on one end and 1/4 inch male on the other end to make an armature rig for my webcam, for my GoPro that I use when I'm streaming. And it works great. Highly recommended.
And looking at the shape of the grip on this thing, these are mainly made to be mounted on poles. Is that right?
Yeah, I think the intended use is probably to hang them on the side of a light pole or a tripod if you want a light, or if you want something to go on a tripod that is not going on the main mount on the top of the tripod.
Right. What I mean is because it's got a rounded shape to the grip. It probably wouldn't hold on to a flat surface like a vice grip type thing. Wait, it does?
Yeah, it depends on which one you get, but the ones I have some of the ones Pat linked. I also have a couple of metal ones that I use for heavier duty stuff, including my wind meter out in the backyard, which is on a pole on the top of the house.
Okay.
And it'll bite on something flat. They'll bite on something flat.
Okay, that's good to know.
A bookshelf or something like that.
Okay, I've got some stuff like this on the way from the latest kind of quarterly budget buy at work. Nicer camera. Yes, nicer than my shitty old C920.
Yeah,
on the way. But I've got a clamp very similar to this on the way, and I was wondering, I was going to try to mount it to the I'm using one of the multi-mounts for the Elgato key light, which is just a very heavy.
Totally work for that.
I knew it would for that, but I thought about trying to mount it to the my monitor arm, like he said he's doing with this.
That's what I've done.
But because it's not a rounded like pole-like shape, I was worried this type of grip wouldn't hold on to it, but it sounds like maybe that might be worth a shot.
So the problem with mounting it on the monitor arm isn't that it won't stay on. And if you have a really girthy monitor arm, it might not work. But mine is like 2.5 inches and it barely clamps on.
Okay.
The problem I have is that when you adjust the monitor arm, it jacks up your camera aim every single time.
Oh, sure.
So like,
maybe I'll just mount it to the key light. Cause I mean, if I'm using the camera, I'm also using the light. So I might as well just make those one contraption. The other thing he listed is a flexible arm clamp. Again, instead of using a tripod, I clamp this onto one of my the arms of my monitor stand for my model kit building streams. Probably the best purchase I've made for my streams. And that is a kind of snake-like. It's like a very flexible, bendy sort of
It's like a gooseneck kind of like with a hard like armature wire inside a thing. I have a couple of relatives that have chronic pain problems, and you can get these that have like a tablet or phone holder as well.
Okay.
And they use them on their bed to like hang a Kindle above them so they don't have to hold their arms up when they're laying in bed reading at night.
Okay.
And yeah, wonderful, wonderful devices. And they're like $10.
Yeah. This one says max load weighed 1.1 pounds. So
yeah,
you're not going to mount like a super heavy camera with it, but
like I have one of them on my desk that I use when I do like a top down thing on a cutting mat or something for a build. It's same thing, same exact thing Pat uses it for, I'm sure.
Sure.
By the way, if you don't, you should check out Pat's Twitch channel. He builds model kits and Lego and does good stuff at twitch.tv/PatBear.
Yeah. Let's see. Should we do one more email?
Yeah, I got one more in me. We got through a lot of these. I wasn't expecting.
How about? I lost it. Is this it? Let's just do a good old PC email.
We have two good PC emails. The Josh Fink one is good too, I think.
Yeah, that's the one I was going to read because
perfect.
Because we have potentially sounds like new hardware.
Shit, I just said his last name, but he didn't say not to say his name. So
let's cross our fingers.
Yeah,
hope it's okay. Since there's hardware announcements potentially nigh on the horizon.
Really? Oh, you don't say.
Maybe it's the word on the street.
NVIDIA's been doing a different day of their GPU history for the last 20 years, for the last 20 days.
Yeah.
And
what could they be building up to?
I don't know. I think they have a stream this first. I don't know.
Josh from Colorado. How often do you rebuild your gaming PC? I have an i7 6700K with a GTX 1070 and have been contemplating when to upgrade. What pushes you over the edge and gets you to upgrade? What are you currently running? Some extra info to keep the actual question short. I'm running a 1080p 144 hertz monitor, but I don't get the full 144 frames per second. I should probably buy a new GPU when those come out, but I don't know if my CPU or GPU is the true bottleneck. Big picture question first for you. I mean, like, I've never been in the position where PC companies were sending me a bunch of hardware, so I've always bought all my PC stuff. So like, let's exclude that phase of your life and say like
the getting free hardware constantly phase.
Yes. Like,
yeah.
Like do you have a barometer, or like for me, there's just kind of like this nebulous upgrade itch that starts kicking in after a while. And that used to,
yeah.
Like that back in the day that ran on like a 18 months, 2 year cycle or something, which got very expensive, So it's much longer now.
Yeah. It was really nice when I left tested and suddenly didn't have to use my main computer at home as like a way to test stuff.
Yeah. That would be like really lousy.
Yeah. It's because it was always, that's kind of like at Maximum PC, I was always bringing stuff home to get more like data points on like what it was like in an actual working, like, because like having testbed machines in the lab was great because we could wipe them really easily. We had shared images. It was really easy to do testing, but you kind of didn't get to see how it worked like in a crufted up actual used machine. So it's been really nice the last few years not having to constantly open the computer and like having the computer closed for long enough for there to be dust in there. That's a new thing in my life.
It's the small things.
I mean, I know I sound like a total asshole here. Since I left Tested, I built a PC right before I left that I bought the hardware for. And that was a Hexacore 5800, maybe 48. It was a Broadwell Hexacore.
Okay.
That machine, that CPU had some problems, and just out of warranty, it died. Because it wasn't. Look, the pump in my all-in-one water cooler crapped out, and I didn't know, and it ran really, really hot for a long time before it finally crapped out. Anyway, I replaced that. That was in probably 2016, like end of 2016, and then I just upgraded that machine this year because I got I participated in some Intel gaming tournament, and they sent me a CPU as a result of that.
Okay.
So I'm running an i9 9900K and a 2080 Ti right now, with 32 gigs of RAM and a couple SSDs, a couple of NVMe SSDs.
Okay.
And a big giant, like 8 terabyte regular hard drive.
Yeah. I for whatever reason, I feel like I'm on about a 5-year cycle at this point.
Yeah.
Thinking back the last couple machines, like in 2010, I built an i7 860, I believe. Yeah. Which was was that a quad core? I forget.
That would have been an early quad core or a late dual core. I can't remember.
Yes. Used that for 5 years, built a 6700K in like late 2015, early 2016. Ended up putting a 7700K into that same machine down the line because I needed the other CPU for something else. And that's what I'm still on at this point. 7700K and a 1080, not a TI, just a plain old GTX 1080. With 16 gig of RAM, so I'm feeling the upgrade itch. Like I'm basically.
Do you feel like things are not running? Like, have you hit stuff that doesn't run right on the 1080?
Not at all. And
that's games,
the thing. You mean games wise? Like
games wise,
maybe like nothing runs poorly, but there's some stuff that could run better. You know, like I'm certainly not like in agony. You know, I'm not dealing with any like 40 frames per second type situations or anything like that. Yeah. But like there are spots certainly where getting into Minecraft shaders was probably the most taxing thing I've done on that card in a while.
Noted 2010 graphical powerhouse Minecraft.
Hey, some of those shaders look pretty damn good, man.
Crisis of its generation.
Yes, but yeah, it's less, especially on the CPU end, it's less that I feel like I'm hitting any kind of wall as so much as just like, it's been a while. There's way better stuff out there these days. You know, it might be nice to, yeah.
My general strategy has always been, if it's working, don't mess with it.
Yeah.
And, you know, buy a CPU and motherboard and put enough that are going to last for as long as you 5 years is a good target, I think, for the core kind of components. And then like plan to do a midlife GPU upgrade.
That sounds right.
And you'll be in pretty good shape is kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah. So him being on a 6700K, you feel like he's kind of due. I feel like
that's probably that's right on the border, because 6700K is the min spec for a VR machine.
Right. When
Oculus and Valve or HTC launched the like, hey, make your games run at this, and you're going to be CPU. If you buy a 3080 or a 3070, I don't know anything about those GPUs, but what I know about, if you put a 2070 or 2080 in that machine right now, you would 100% be CPU bound.
Yeah. So this is just my gut feeling, but I would guess, let's say late next year, once games that are designed for the PS5 and Series X start getting ported to PC, you'll probably start feeling it even more on the CPU.
I would think so. I think we're like console. It's always dangerous to buy into the first generation, the generation that lands the same year the consoles land, because sometimes new stuff takes a little while to trickle down. I feel like with the way modern games work and the way the kind of render scaling works on a lot of games automatically, so you can kind of set the target frame rate and resolution you want, and then it'll do the internal resolution at whatever it needs to make the game run. I feel like you can have a pretty good experience on almost anything. Like my laptop, which is a 1060, plays stuff at a resolution I would play on a laptop shockingly well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's just good business sense, just to make sure your game runs on as much or as wide a range as possible. But, I would guess most people listening to this podcast want to be on the higher end of the range.
Yeah,
for quality and performance.
The 144 hertz monitor is a little bit of a crinkle, a kink in the plan, because like you do need you're looking at 2 point something times the amount of frames per second that you're trying to draw.
Yeah.
And that is going to require more horsepower. But at 1080p, it's like the choices are, you're going to play 4K games at a lower frame rate, or you're going to play 1080p games at 1080p at a higher frame rate. And like my personal preference is that single player stuff, I usually play at the higher resolution, and multiplayer stuff, I usually play at the higher frame rate.
Sure.
So
I think there, it remains to be seen. Things could always change, but I don't see a situation where I don't transition to AMD for my next machine at this point.
I mean, I just did the 9900K, or I probably would have done a Ryzen machine this year.
Yeah. It's getting really hard to argue with that value proposition.
Yeah.
So
the only reason Intel makes sense is if you're not paying for hardware.
Yes.
At the high end, especially.
Yes. All right. That's it for emails. We got through, like you said, more of those than I expected.
Yeah, we really hammered through them. Yeah. The bummers at the beginning were
there's nowhere to go but up.
Hey, look, with that, we brought that on ourselves.
Talking about buses and meeting spouses and so forth.
Do you know now what time we're at? What time of the podcast we're in?
I don't.
It's one of my favorite times. It's when we thank the patrons who make the podcast possible.
It's the best part of it. Yeah, we wouldn't be here without them.
And some things have happened.
Oh.
Well, first off, we have to shout out Julian, who is Julian Wheels in the Discord, who sent an email in last week and was like, hey, maybe 2 weeks ago now. It's like, hey, I would like to, I've been experimenting with this transcript generation stuff, and I think you guys should have transcripts for your podcast. Will you send me some split audio files so I can noodle around with this and see if we can figure out a way to do it that's not going to cost a fortune and will deliver decent results? So for last week, there is a transcript for episode 49. And if people like that and are into it, please let us know. So we will figure out a way to pay Julian for his time and efforts, or at least make sure he isn't losing money, and we'll keep doing it, because I think it's awesome. A good thing. I've never done a podcast with a transcript before, and we're set up to do it here, which is nice.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for your time and effort. I had missed that stuff. Is that actually out on the server?
It's out now. Yeah.
Okay.
I posted it this morning. I finally figured out how to post it to our podcast host.
I had one of those days where I was so busy I didn't really have time to look at the server, and those always feel like bad days. Yeah, because I want to keep up with everything that's going on in there, and if I turn off that information valve, I start feeling like something is amiss.
I like to dip. I dip in and dip out at like even if it's just a few minutes at lunchtime. I'm in there reading.
Yeah.
But we are for people who ask, for people who are wondering, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy kind of book club goal. We're at, when I looked before the start of the show, we were at 968 patrons. So we're closing in, 32 to go, I think.
When we hit the magic number, is that my cue to start reading? That's not our cue to record the episode, right? I
figure we're going to give people a heads up when we hit the number, and then if we dip back below, we'll just pull the carrot back away.
I don't want to. I'm getting flashbacks from college of trying to cram an entire book.
You're gonna look down my
gullet.
You can just watch the movie; it'll be fine. Nobody will know. They're all exactly the same.
I'll get a head start on it.
Yeah. But yeah, I want to thank our patrons. So thanks to our executive producer level patrons, Andrew Cotton, David Allen, and Jacob Chappell. And also thank you to our associate producer level patrons, Arthur Gies, CJ Rebeta, Dan Brockman, Dave Ulian, Graham Banks, Jad Rita, Sam Buck, not Sam Bunk. That's a different person. The Bunny Fiend. Really loves the bunnies.
Yes.
And Thomas Shea. So thank you all so much.
Yes, thank you.
If you would like to find out how you can support the pod, For $2 a month, you can get access to the Discord, which is an incredible resource full of wonderful people. And at $5 a month, you get our monthly patron episodes, which we're going to record sometime in the next couple of days when I get my home assistant server running and I have something to talk about that isn't just failure.
I don't know.
I think I'm almost there. I think I'm real close.
Yeah, I was trying to think of something nice to say about home automation, and it was coming up blank because I've had my own issues of late.
I have something nice to say about home automation. In the old days, when we were talking about like X10 home automation, it just didn't work no matter what you did.
At least it was predictable.
Yeah. Nothing you could do would make it work. Now, in 2020, with standards and a bunch of other things, the difference is that now it does actually work, but setting it up requires heroic measures if you want it to work right.
Yeah.
So
also, I found occasionally it just works and then it doesn't.
So the good stuff, once you get it working, I have not had that. Like once you get the stuff that uses Z-Wave and Zigbee and like hubs and all that stuff working, once you get it configured and working, it's pretty solid.
This was, I should save it, but this was using Homebridge to add some Casa devices to Apple Home.
Oh no.
Which was fine right up until what's that? You're not a fan?
No, I use Homebridge. It's great. I've never had any problem. My instance of Homebridge has been running faithfully for like 3 years now without me having looked at it at all.
I suspect that the problem is not Homebridge, but rather Apple Home.
Oh, that's possible.
I think that's my guess. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, this is a future topic, but thanks for listening, everybody, and we will see you all next week, I guess.